Little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Coming to Teach for America, I didn't know I would teach Ricky Summers. Ricky Summers was an 8th grader I taught last year who came to us at Kid Central City Academy in the 5th grade, not on grade level in reading, writing, and math, and was a very sweet boy. Ricky liked to laugh a lot and told a lot of jokes. And one of the jokes I remember about Ricky is he always walked through school. And he loved school, did his homework every day, loved school so much, he had pants that he'd always wear just below his knees with his independent reading book in the back. And I recall days I'd see Ricky walk through the hall and shout like he wasn't supposed to. I'm going to college! I'm going to college! And everybody laughed, including some of his teachers. We laughed because we knew Ricky's struggles. Ricky was raised by his grandmother, neither of his parents around. And here he is, every day, screaming boldly, he's going to college. Brother has the nerve to have his independent reading book just below his knees. But it wasn't a joke to him. Because never before in Ricky's life did he think that he had the potential to defy the odds until he came to us in 8th grade. Last year, this week, Ricky was shot and killed a few blocks away from our school. And we identified him because of his blue Kip sweatshirt, because he had his independent reading book in the back pocket of his pants. At his funeral, we were told the results of his test scores, a test that we have our students take to predict how they will perform on the ACT. We do this to determine whether or not they will qualify for TOPS, which in Ricky's case would have given him a full ride to a college, public institution, any public institution in the state of Louisiana. And while at his funeral, just before the mayor spoke, they announced that based on the scores we received back, that Ricky, not on grade level, poor black boy Ricky, was on track to go to college. And he was on track to receive TOPS. When I heard this news, I lost it. I lost it because I believe that I've been lied to. I've been trained that I was Superman. I've been trained that because I'm Superman, this type of stuff doesn't happen on my watch. That I am the savior. And for the first time in my teaching experience, for the first time in my experience as a leader, I felt like I failed. Because for once, there was something that I could not master, that I could not command, because it was so complex that it was outside of my control. And the truth is, though, that no experience, no blueprint, no textbook, no training session could have taught me this lesson. There's no blueprint for how to deal with tragedies like this. There's no blueprint for how to teach my students how not to get killed. There's no blueprint for me to teach my students how not to kill one another. There's no blueprint to teach me how to lead my classroom after a tragedy like this. Because when the time to lead calls, you just go. There is no blueprint for that. And the type of work that we have been doing, I now 3 years, you too, is some of the most profound work that exists in this world. It's profound because we're in the process of doing, here in New Orleans, something that has essentially never been done. And as you've heard from Shreve, as you've heard from Kira, as you've heard from Jack, it requires leadership, but a different kind. Last year, as I sat in the seats that you're sitting in, I was just beginning to make sense of what had happened to Ricky, to his peers, to our school community, to his family. And just as I knew it then, I know it now. And that is that we're doing so much that many of us in this room are literally redefining what is possible for our kids. For many of us, we're motivating our students to redefine what is possible for them, and their children, and their children's children. But what I hope we come to realize is that we're not Superman, and that the buck doesn't have to stop with us, but that I need you just as much as you need me. Because together with others who dedicated themselves to this work, dedicated themselves to literally lifting students like Ricky out of the muck and mire of poverty that is so cyclical and that is so damaging, disproportionately affecting communities of color. We must realize that we are in this together, but that we ultimately have this obligation, because these are some different type of kids. These are some different type of kids. These are kids who are literally entrenched in what Tupac called the concrete. Yet, we have an obligation to them. We have an obligation to them because we're that different type of leader that doesn't see the concrete as the defining factor of their lives. The fact that Ricky grew up in the hood didn't define Ricky for me. The fact that Ricky wanted to go to college and redefine what was possible for his life defined Ricky for me. And I challenge us that maybe there is a Ricky that you teach, that you have taught, that literally every day doesn't know whether or not they're going to have dinner that night, who may be a baby but is on the verge of having a baby themselves. Someone who experiences emotional, physical, psychological abuse. Someone who's in the concrete. Maybe you have that person. My challenge to all of us tonight is that we have to be that different type of leader that looks at the story, not the circumstance, in order to define what is possible for our kids. Now, we all have Rickies. But as Tupac eloquently says, Ricky is a rose. And maybe you know some roses. He's a rose that is growing, or that was growing from concrete. Proved nature's law was wrong. And he learned to walk without having feet. And by keeping his dreams, he learned to breathe fresh air. And he's breathing. I see it and I feel it every day that I teach. And every day since when I saw this empty chair in my classroom. Now, doing what I'm talking about requires something from us. It requires a price. Something that comes from not only examining your story, which is what I found myself doing last year in the seats that you're sitting in, but when I'm thinking about what I wanted to do beyond my second year in the classroom, because I too came from the concrete, I know what it feels to not get the attention that you deserve because your parents are spending so much attention on your sister who had a child at a very young age. I know what it feels to see the disappointment in your parents' face when, because they can no longer afford where you live, you have to live with a coworker for several weeks until they find a place for you. I know what it is to hear constant calls from my older sister who faces physical and emotional abuse from her husband. That's the concrete that I came from. And that I didn't think seriously about until I was sitting where you're sitting. But what was funny is how when I didn't have a blueprint to teach me how to lead in the situation I was in after Ricky's death, where I found the blueprint was within. And maybe the blueprint that instructs you on where you are going. It's not something that you can get from others. It's not something that you read about. It's not something that someone can tell you, even tonight. Maybe it requires an examination of yourself. Why do you do this? Why do you want to lead? Who do you want to be in this world? What is it going to take for you to be that? And in examining those questions for myself, it led me to come back a third year. Because what I learned from my story is the importance of agency and the importance of choice. That I could literally come from the same loins as my sisters, yet end up in drastically different outcomes because of agency and choice. And because of that, I wanted to teach that to my students. Because I knew I did not teach that my first 2 years. And so I'm back in it. And I'm loving it. Because what I'm doing matches the blueprint inside of me. And maybe that's what you need. And so, when the time to lead comes, the question is, what will you do? Where will you stand? And no matter what your decision, I challenge you to think about the obligation we all have in this room to drastically changing the outcomes of the students that we all know and love so dearly. Because we all know a Ricky. We all know someone who's come from the concrete. We all know someone who wants to be a rose coming from it. We all know someone who has a dream. We have dreams. And they just need someone to advocate. They need someone that sees it and learns to define them for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for modeling, for sharing. I'm honored to have you speak to the board. My name is Jeffrey Fingerman. I was a 2003 GNL Corps member of 9th grade math in New Orleans East. I head up our alumni impact team and been working on the Beyond 2 project to get it ready for you and get the next month ready for you alongside Casey and Sarah. We are very excited to kick off tonight. What we're going to do right now, you will see a little envelope on your table. If you open that envelope, you'll see a little instruction card with 3 questions. What I'd like for you to do is take the next few minutes as the table to read through these questions, pull your letter of intent that you wrote when you applied to join Teaching American Corps out of your folder, and share around the table you haven't had a chance to grab a buffet, this would be a great time